Hey everyone, so you might have realized that Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War had a couple different betas. One was just for PlayStation users, but I believe that was an open beta. I just made a pretty decent gaming PC, so I pre-ordered the game and participated in the closed pre-order PC beta that they had, and then that eventually correlated into having a crossplay weekend that got extended to, I believe it was Monday afternoon or maybe Tuesday afternoon. But it was super fun, so I want to kind of share some of my feedback on what the experience was like. So first of all, in terms of just the quality of the game, this is a Call of Duty game, right? So that, you can expect normal types of game modes like multiplayer. And then there was a Warzone functionality I didn't test out because I'm not really big into Battle Royale type modes, but I did try every single multiplayer mode. They did not have any kind of campaign or zombies beta test in this period, but gunplay, high quality as per usual. The actual server aspect of things felt pretty solid. I didn't feel like there were any issues with high ping or any kind of weird issues going on. So, that can be expected. They release this thing every year, so they know what they're doing at this point. My favorite part was definitely their big, I guess this would be kind of like the ground war equivalent mode. And these are the ones where you have a big, wide battlefield, and there was, I think, 3 different maps that they had with this. There's this map that it's kind of like in the middle of the ocean. There's all these ships. That's probably my favorite. There's definitely a little bit of cheese that can go on in it because you can swim underwater and take objectives underwater and shoot underwater. So there's a period where you can dive into this submarine that was near, I think it was Objective C, and just kind of float underwater and shoot people that are out of the water, and just kind of camp and have a blast. And there's a couple different cheese moments, but I think moments like that make the game fun because also people find workarounds to those cheese moments. People can, for that example, people can camp outside the windows and shoot down to the water, and people can get into these big ships, just kind of spam fire across the objective and kind of cancel out the cheesiness that is just camping under the water. But it's super fun because it kind of adds a third dimension. Like normally Call of Duty games are just run around, like a 2D plane. You might have some different floors, but this ship level had a lot of depth to it. Like some of these ships had like 3 or 4 or 5 different height levels, and then of course there's water, and then the battlefield's massive, and you can take all these different vehicles, and it feels very real. It doesn't feel like there's people just coming from one spawn location. It's relatively smart at spawning people around. There were a couple moments where I just would keep spawning at an objective, and then the opposing team kind of had the ability to set up camp and just kind of wait for people to pop out and then capture all the other objectives. But for the most part, it was a non-issue. There's workarounds for everything. So that was my favorite mode, or my favorite map. Now, there's this map where you're kind of like, I forgot what they call it, but you're in like this big field and there's this grass, and it's kind of a similar thing. You can kind of have stealth in this. People can obviously just shoot through the grass and find you, but you can kind of sneak through and work your way to the center objective that way. And now I didn't really like that map as a whole. It just felt a little wide open, and so you kind of run out and just like die and then run back out and then die, kind of repetitively. But it was still fun. It wasn't my favorite. And then there's another map in that mode that I'm blanking on. Again, the name, these names, I'll memorize them as the game comes up. My favorite was definitely the water map. Now, in terms of the regular multiplayer experience, like when you're not doing these big, massive... Oh, okay, now I remember. There's kind of like this... It's this ice map where you're... it's kind of like big open field as well, so there's lots of opportunities for people to snipe at a distance, but it doesn't feel as campy as Modern Warfare did. And it's probably because, one, you can run a lot faster and the time to death is a little bit longer. And so it felt a little less campy as Modern Warfare. If you played Modern Warfare, you probably know that like a lot of those ground war maps, you just run out and then immediately get sniped from some imperceivably long distance away, and it kind of penalized you for not playing like that. At least that's what I felt like. Whereas in this particular map, you could do that, but there were plenty of places to hide and run between buildings and buildings. And you could kind of play any style you wanted to. You could jump in a tank and have a blast. You could run and jump on objectives and have close combat, or you could just kind of camp in a corner. And all 3 modes, you have a pretty solid time. I didn't feel like anything had a imbalance, at least on that map, or really any of those 3 bigger kind of ground war type experiences. I think there were 2 different modes on those, and there's one that's just like domination, and there's another one where everyone's fighting for one objective at a time, and then you're kind of going back and forth capturing it, and then they have the chance to take it back, and then you could capture the next one, and I think that was the funnest, because it instead of having like 5 objectives and each team kind of gets their own side, you get the opportunity to force people into one location, which made it so that if you were just trying to camp in one space, the locations are constantly moving, so teams are constantly pushing and pulling between all these different locations. And if you just stayed in one spot, you'd either have nothing to do, or you would just get overwhelmed very, very quickly. So it feels like, you know, the kind of lame thing that everyone hates with just camping is gone. Now, there is one thing that some people might be upset about that you probably realize, is that there's no drop shotting in this game as much. You know, every time you do try to go to prone or try to crouch while you're aiming, it'll break your aim for a second. So you can't just like run at someone, see them, and just start crouching while you're aiming and shooting, which feels a little better. You know, as an alternative, what people are doing now, it seemed like more so than Modern Warfare, is they're jumping a lot more. And maybe this will be less of an issue on consoles, but in PC, it's very easy just to like smash jump and aim, you know, because you're jumping with your left hand where you're aiming with your right hand. Whereas on a console, you're probably, you know, pressing A, so you can't really aim at the same time as jumping. But you know, I feel like it's a lot fairer than the whole drop shotting thing, which is kind of a crutch. I felt like, you know, it was kind of like a guaranteed way to do better, and now it's eliminated. So I think that's an improvement. You can still do the sliding things, but like while you're sliding, you can't aim. You have to wait till you finish sliding to a degree, and overall it feels a little bit better balanced. And in terms of like the actual combat, like I alluded to this in the beginning, but things do feel better. Meaning when you're shooting something, you actually like kind of feel it more. Whereas I don't know what it is, if it's just something with the sound. I mean, since I'm playing on a PC, I'm not getting, you know, haptic vibration feedback from a controller. So it's just all sound, and it just, everything feels a little punchier, right? Like when you have like a machine gun, you just feel every single shot just like punch, and when you hit someone, it really lets you know that you're hitting them. And same as when you're getting attacked, it can be a lot more intense than in Modern Warfare, where it might just happen. Now, obviously, there's audio settings and you can adjust things, and that's all cool, but everything just feels more impactful, I guess is probably the best word. Now, one interesting thing is someone on console mentioned to me that they couldn't change their field of view, and I don't know if this will change or if they were just wrong, but on PC, you can widen your field of view, which I would imagine gives the PC players an advantage, but maybe they just don't care, because in a way, PC players kind of already have other advantages, while console players have different advantages. I mean, I think overall PC probably has more advantages, but you know, it seemed like they tried to balance PC players being on different teams. So it wasn't like one team had like 8 PC players and the other one had none. They were all console or something like that. They typically would get spread, which is good. That makes sense. And in terms of what is it called, matchmaking, I heard there was a lot of talk about ranked or skill-based matchmaking, and you know, I don't know anything about that. I'm not necessarily the best player of this game. You know, I'm a very casual user, like probably the average person, honestly. And things never felt bad. And you know, they were probably tweaking things throughout the beta just to kind of give people different experiences, and then wait for people's anger online. You know, like test something and then kind of watch Twitter or whatever, or maybe they had people that they were getting direct feedback from. Just to try to see like what the community is liking. So they could have tweaked it and I didn't know. And you know, again, not a very good player, so I probably wouldn't notice too much if one game I was doing really good and the next I was doing really bad, because that's just normal for me. I'm not a power player that always does good, and I'm sure players like that would be much more sensitive to feeling certain things in the game. But if you're that person, you probably get the beta, so you probably already know. In terms, let's see, what else is there? So there's the regular multiplayer maps and stuff, and there were some good ones and there were some bad ones. There's one that I forget what it's called, you know, once again, I think it's Moscow. It's kind of in a Russian temple kind of thing, and that place just felt not fun at all, and I don't know what it was. It just, maybe because there were so many corridors and different angles, and it's all like half of it's inside and half of it's outside. It just felt like every time you went to do something, someone was coming at you from another angle, and I'm sure that's a balancing thing, or maybe it's just people learn the different paths over time, and since it's new, everyone's just kind of sprinting around aimlessly, but it felt like a little more chaotic. Like people were just kind of coming from every single direction and there was no coordination. But again, every game's going to have the best maps and the worst maps. And my personal favorite was, as I mentioned, that water map that was for the kind of ground war mode, or whatever they're calling their their ground war mode. And some of the maps kind of appear in both places, and in different cases things feel better or worse. Like that map I mentioned that had the grass, that one, it felt really chaotic in ground war, but I think that's kind of the fun part. And then when you're playing it in multiplayer, it felt a little more empty. So I feel like, you know, they're kind of dual using maps in some cases, and they probably have to kind of pick what they want to optimize things for. And some maps are kind of in between, so they just put them on both. And it's, you know, I guess it depends on your play style. In terms of weapons, I tried out as much as I could, but I felt like the Overwatch kind of stock loadout that they give you ended up being my favorite by far. And it was, I think it's an M16 with a zoomed in, some kind of zoom in scope. And it just felt consistently, for me, I would do best with that gun on almost every single map, unless it was like a tight quarters run and gun map, because it kind of gives you a medium range. You can kind of snipe with it, like most distances across the maps. You can snipe people from very, very far. And at the same time, you could also do medium range. As soon as people got close, it was hard, but that's when I would, like if it was a close map, I would switch to a different gun. One of my favorites in multiplayer is this map that almost looks like a Star Wars Battlefront kind of thing. You're in this deserty field and there's all these rocks. I think it's set in Africa. And it's really cool because there's a crashed like satellite in the middle. You can climb up on these rocks. You kind of get a height advantage, but then everyone's kind of fighting for that spot. Or you can go in the dunes and kind of snipe from there, or do other things. You know, there's a lot of different angles you could do things in this map. There's also these trenches that you can run through if you're trying to sneak by. There were times where, depending on the play style of people involved, where you might just get completely spawn killed at times. You know, you could run across the map in probably 4 seconds or 5 seconds. So it felt like at times you'd spawn and then immediately get, you know, there'd be a team of 3 or something that just ran across the map. And then also people would just spawn airstrikes in certain spawns. And then, you know, eventually the spawns will flip, but they don't always flip in time. In general, it wasn't an issue, and it happens to both teams. So, I mean, it's fair at the end of the day. So I don't think it's an issue. But that map is really cool. It has a very cool visual aesthetic. And there's just lots to do. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I want a close quarter combat, run up in the rocks and kind of wait for people to meet you up there. Or you can kind of go in the dunes and go for some more longer distance stuff. And it gets really fun in Kill Confirmed because you can't just camp. You know, if you're doing the longer play, you have to run through these dunes and get exposed. You can't just sit back and do nothing after you get a confirmed kill. You have to actually confirm it. And there were some times where I would try to just be the confirming guy, like, you know, run around and just grab all the tags, because some people they want to just shoot. They don't really care about the objective, and that's whatever. That's up to them. So I'll just run around and just grab all the tags and do that. And that's kind of fun in its own. Or you could just kind of be that player that just sits in the corner and gets the kills and lets your team just go grab the tags. But you are rewarded for actually playing the objectives. And there wasn't a point where kill streaks came into play that felt unfair, with the exception of some of the chopper gunner things, but at the end of the day, everyone gets access to that. It's just there's certain times where if someone in your team didn't have like a missile launcher, you would just be in the air for like the maximum amount of time, and it would just get very old very fast, especially in that map with the grass that I mentioned, because there's very few inside parts. You'd be running through these indoors, but you never get good access to any objective, and it would just be very cheap. And then on the flip side, in certain maps, you'd call something and just immediately get shut down if the other team has a lot of anti-air tactics. And there are like I forget what it's called, if you press X, at least on PC, you get to spawn like an anti-air like turret, and there's also other types of turrets and different little, not kill streaks, but like timer-based things you can spawn to do certain activities, like shoot stuff out of the air or what be it. But anyways, the game was super fun. I like it a lot more than Modern Warfare. It just it just overall, like, it's a better experience personally. I think I like the faster play. I like the better impact of the guns. It doesn't feel as spawny and campy, and that's probably from the extra time to kill. And I'm excited to see the other maps because, this wasn't all the maps. I'm excited to see the zombies mode. I'm excited to see all the other guns that I didn't include in the beta. And yeah, it was fun. I don't remember what level I got to, but you'll probably see it. You've probably seen it at the screen at some point. But it'll be fun starting from scratch. It was very rewarding. Like, you play a game and unlock a whole bunch of stuff, which is very satisfying. Anyways, I'll get some stuff when the game comes out. That's not necessarily what my channel is about, doing gaming, but this is my nerdery channel. So I just gotta kind of do what I want whenever things come around. So anyways, see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.